Perfect. Awesome. So I just want to welcome you all to part one of our economic empowerment series. And this is presented by Charles Schwab. I'm Kimberly Saunders with National Black MBA Association of Central Florida, and we just want to welcome you again. We have a three-part series that we start this evening. Next week on April the 26th is part 2, and on May 3rd, we have part 3 in conjunction with our general body meeting. On behalf of the Central Florida Chapter Executive Board, as well as our leadership team, we want to thank Charles Schwab as our sponsor for this series. They have been a sponsor and partner for the last several years in various capacities, primarily for Financial Literacy Month and our economic empowerment. And just so you're aware of parts 2 and 3, part 2 will feature entrepreneurs, small business owners conversation as far as planning options that are available if you ever decide to become an entrepreneur, or if you're currently a small business owner, what options you have available to you. And then our final series, which is part 3, wraps up on May 3rd with our Q2 general body meeting, as well as the topic entitled Wealth Building Through Franchising, where we'll have a panel of franchisees, current franchisees, that will talk about their experiences within their respective franchises. So at this time, I'm actually going to introduce our representatives from Charles Schwab. I would like to introduce Tracy Tonge, and she has been our liaison for the past several years. She is a senior manager, business unit risk analysis, and she's also now the National BPAC's co-chair. So Tracy, if you'd like to say a few words on behalf of Charles Schwab.
Certainly. Thank you, Kimberly. Thanks everyone for tuning in with us today. And thank you for my colleague for participating in this event. So as Kimberly has mentioned, I am the national chairperson for the Black employees at Charles Schwab Employee Resource Group. So one of our efforts is to advocate, celebrate, and educate our members and our surrounding communities. So this is one of the reasons why we have partnered with National Black MBA for the past several years. Any way we can, as far as providing just information or education around financial literacy that will impact the Black community. I'll turn it back over to you, Kimberly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tracy. We do have 2 individuals that will be guiding us through our conversation over the next 45 minutes or so. So I will provide a brief introduction and then allow for them to tell a little bit more about their background. First, we have Ben Ashleman, and Ben is a senior financial consultant for the Employee Branch and Advice Services Network. Ben holds a certified financial planner's certification and has been employed with Schwab for over 12 years. Ben, I will allow you to tell a little bit more about yourself and then introduce your counterpart, Sylvia.
Sure, yeah. So, so again, my name is Ben. I have been with Schwab for 12 years. Yesterday actually was year number 12. It was the anniversary just yesterday, so I just hit that mark. But I'm in a unique position where I get to advise Schwab employees on their finances in whatever capacity is needed. And so it's a pretty unique opportunity that myself and also Sylvia find ourselves in, and really something that we think is pretty special and a pretty special benefit, frankly, that is offered to Schwab employees by Schwab. So as part of that, I help support our employees in Orlando. I do, somehow they gave me an MBA from Indiana University, so I do have an MBA as well. I don't know if they screwed up, but you know, at the end of the day, it's really exciting for us to get to work with our employees. And you know, it's interesting because when you think folks that are working at Charles Schwab, I mean, the assumption is that of course they're supposed to be familiar with this, and the reality is that 75% of the employees at Charles Schwab are not licensed and are not familiar with personal financial planning matters. And so this is a great opportunity for us to talk to you a little bit about some things maybe that you should be aware of. I think that education is improving around personal financial education, but certainly there's a long way to go with that. And so I'm just excited to be here today to help give you any sort of thoughts or bits of wisdom that I can. Sylvia has been around longer than I have at Schwab, haven't you?
I have been. Hello, everybody. My name is Sylvia Arellano. I'm a certified financial planner as well. I am an employee with employee branch at Schwab, same as Ben. I have been at Schwab. It's going to be 22 years in November, so a little longer than Ben. You couldn't tell, right? I look like 30 years younger, but I have been around for a really, really long time. I have actually been at Schwab for 22 years, but I've been in the industry for over 3 decades. I started with 401k plans, going out and presenting to employees out in the middle of factory floors when 401k plans were babies. They had just been presented into the public, and I would go out and I would present 401ks. What are they? How do they work? This is before we had computers and before we had auto enrollment and enroll people with paper forms, so I've been at this for a while. Both on the 401k side, on the stock plan side with equity compensation and RSUs and options and all of that great stuff. So I've been at this for a little bit. For the last several years, I've been working with employees. And as Ben mentioned, it's a privilege to be able to work with employees and to be able to not only talk to them about their 401k plan, but their entire benefit packet, and making sure that they're taking advantage to the fullest of what an employer has to offer. So today I'm, like Ben, very happy to be here and to share anything that we possibly can share, anything that might be useful to you as you are out in the workforce, and making sure that, again, you're taking full advantage of your benefits and of what you're offered, right? So that's a little bit about me. I don't know if we want to just go ahead and jump in. I was going to give just a little bit of an overview of 401k. I'm sure that most of you have heard of 401k plans. Most of you are probably participating in them, but I don't want to leave the meeting without at least making sure that you understand, one, what a great benefit it is. And if there's anything that most of us have the option to participate in, is a 401k, right? Some of us will have an option or an ability to participate in restricted stock or ESPP. Some of them will not, right? But everybody's going to have the option to participate in a 401k. So one, don't forget to participate in the 401k. Usually a 401k has a matching contribution, right? An employer will give you some money if you contribute on your behalf, right? So some employers will give you dollar for dollar, some 50 cents on a dollar. If they do give you that matching, which again, most employers do, please take them up on it. Don't give up free money, because that is free money, right? If you're putting in $1 and they're giving you 50 cents, and if they do it for up to 5%, don't start at 3%, start at that 5%. If you start anything less than what they match you at, you're leaving free money on the table. That's super important. First rule of 401k plans is make sure that you're participating at the very minimum to the match, right? That's your starting point. That's where you start at. Because again, if not, you're leaving free money on the table. 2 is make sure you understand what kind of money you can participate in. Is it going to be pre-tax money, or is it going to be Roth money? Most 401k plans now offer you a Roth option, and it always confuses people. What should I be doing, pre-tax or Roth? What's the best option? It kind of depends. There are rules of thumb for some people, right? The younger you are, the more you might benefit from a Roth option, because a Roth allows you to participate in a 401k with after-tax money. So you put your money in there, you don't pay taxes on it. I mean, you pay taxes on it, And then it grows, but it grows tax-free, so that when you take it out, you don't have to pay taxes on any of that growth. And to be honest with you, in a 401k plan, if you have enough time, you're going to make your money not on what you put in, but on the growth, right? It's compounding interest on top of interest. It's investing that money. It's that growth. That growth is going to be from the time that you have that money invested and the investment. Imagine all of that money coming out and there's no taxes on it. So it's a great benefit the longer you have. That's usually a rule of thumb. There are other reasons why you would want to do a Roth over a pre-tax. Pre-tax is your basic, right? If you put money in there, IRS says, hey, we're not going to tax you on it, right? But guess what? At the end, IRS is going to knock on your door and say, yeah, now we want our taxes. So not only do we want our taxes on the money that you put in there, but we also want our taxes on all of that growth that you benefited from. So 100% taxation at the end versus you don't get taxes at the end on the Roth. So there's pros and cons of doing one versus the other. So understanding that a 401k is not just, yes, I'm going to participate and I'm going to get the match, but one, am I going to do pre-tax or Roth? The other question is, right, the investment. Usually a 401k is the very first place that you experience investments. At least for me, that was the first place I ever went to that I actually got to invest in stocks or mutual funds or anything like that. I had no clue. And I will tell you that I enrolled in a 401k again when they were very tiny, and that was the best decision that I made, and I didn't make it for myself. I had a manager that came to me and said, sign this, you're going to enroll. And I'm like, what am I doing? You're going to enroll in your 401k. It was the best thing that anybody has ever done for me. And I will thank that manager, will never forget her, that she sat me down and she made me sign that form to invest in the 401k. That's what I used to put a down payment on my first home. I was a single mom, right? It's just, there's certain things that you do not pass up on. 401k is one of them, right? Making sure that you understand that you are actually investing your money. So understanding what you're investing in, asking for that help. Most employers are going to have somebody that you can go to explain to you what those options are and how to invest and what's appropriate for you. So a lot of now 401k plans have a bunch of calculators in them, bunch of education, videos, all that stuff in them. Make sure you take the time, not just enroll, not just auto enroll, which is what most people do, right? Somebody enrolled me, it was automatic. I didn't pick the investments. Take the time to actually understand what your 401k is about, what the options are, making sure that you're taking the maximum benefit of that matching contribution, and don't stop there. That's where you start, right? And then every year, put in a little bit more. Every year, increase it by 1% or 2%. That way you don't feel it, right? And the best time to do it is when you get a raise, right? If you're getting that raise in April every year, go in and put an additional 1%. If you got a 2% or 3% raise, you're not going to feel it out of your pocketbook because you're putting 1% in. You never got that money to begin with. So do that every single year until you max that thing out. You can actually set aside up to $22,500 in 2023, $22,500 if you're under 50. That's a maximum that you can contribute on top of what your employer contributes with the matching contribution, right? And if you're like me, 50 and older, you get a catch-up contribution. That's the only good thing about turning 50 is that you get to do that catch-up contribution. So you get to put another $6,500. Now I can set aside up to $30,000 a year in my 401k. And I don't have to pay taxes on it if I do all pre-tax, right? So there are huge benefits in participating in a 401k. Don't forget about that. Pay attention to that 401k benefit. And I just spilled a bunch of information. Are there any questions, anything that I can answer for you?
Well, and thank you for the introductions, Ben and Sylvia. We'll get into kind of the conversation, so that way there's a couple of polling questions that we'll start out with. So we'll come back to that. We had a couple of it's fine. So there's a couple of things that we'll start out with, and then we can open it up for questions.
Fantastic.
So thank you, Ben. Thank you, Sylvia. So I do have a polling question to start out with. So if you all can just answer poll question number 1, which should be up now, that would be great. Okay. So it looks like for the most part, there, out of the answers, most said no. So it's, are you offered some form of equity compensation? And so that is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation. So 2 years ago, we also had a 3-part series that involved understanding the components of a financial plan. So it walked you through investment planning, retirement income planning, estate planning, tax planning, insurance and risk management, cash flow planning. And one of the things that we try to do as an organization is we try to bring topics based on the feedback from our members, the things that they are experiencing in the real world, the things that they don't quite understand to the fullest capacity. And so equity compensation was the topic that we chose to discuss this economic empowerment series. And so one of the things about equity compensation is a lot of organizations are going beyond just the base salary and bonuses to compensate their employees. It allows for organizations to align people's skills and talents with the objectives and the goals of the organization. And hopefully, because of that, it will create and generate greater performance. As you know, as the company knows that people's compensation packages are in line with their performance on the job. And so that's kind of what sparked the conversation about equity packages. Also, because in this tech-driven society, you see a lot of industries now that are very much offering equity-based compensation. And for those of you that may not know, if you look industry-wide, of course, you'll see the technology industry, telecom, healthcare, energy. Those are some of the top industries that are now positioning or putting together their equity packages, or offering higher equity packages to individuals. So we just want to bring this conversation to you so that you are more prepared to know, one, what is equity compensation, what's included in those packages, and also understand that you can have a very lucrative package and understand that you can negotiate those things as well, depending on your employer and the industry that you're a part of. So we brought in some individuals that will help us break down this very much confusing topic, how it impacts you, how it impacts your income, the impact that it has on taxes, and how you can plan for that in the future. Okay. So that's just to get us started. So let me pull up one more poll, and then I will turn it over to Ben to just give us a little bit more information regarding that. All right, so poll 2, how knowledgeable are you about what's included in your benefits package? Okay, so for the most part, we have the answers were somewhat knowledgeable. Okay, so we're not quite there yet as far as very knowledgeable, and then it looks like everyone has some type of benefits package. You may know some things and you may not know others. Good deal. So I will turn it over to Ben if you can just kind of give us an introduction and go over the different types of equity compensation that most people will see.
Sure. So equity compensation, it's something that, that I discuss and Sylvia discuss on probably a daily basis, I would imagine. It's something that's very, very common in our work, and likely is going to be even more common probably as your careers grow as well, especially with a lot of companies, being pretty new, pretty young startups. a lot of the form of compensation is in the form of equity or stock ownership in that particular company as well. So equity compensation, I mean, it is what it sounds like, right? You are compensated in the form of equity in your company. All equity compensation plans and packages are specific to the company that you're working for. Okay, they all don't look the same. Certainly, they can be structured very, very differently, and that really is up to the company and the people making those decisions as to what they want to make available to their employees. A big part of this is that if you have ownership in your company, you're going to be motivated to want that company to do well, right? And that's kind of a big idea with equity compensation. So I kind of broke this down into a couple of buckets, and I'll just go over some basic and common types of equity compensation. There is restricted stock. Is number one. Restricted stock units or RSUs, and there are restricted stock awards or RSAs. And basically what those are is they are shares of stock that you are awarded that have some sort of a vesting period. For Charles Schwab, I can tell you that it's a 4-year vesting period. So just depending on what level you are in the company, a lot of folks receive regular compensation in the form of RSUs or RSAs, and really the difference between the two is how they get taxed. Do they get taxed when they vest, or can you have them taxed when they are awarded to you? And again, that comes down to financial planning. A lot of times there's no one size fits all for any of this stuff, even the 401k things that Sylvia was speaking about. And a lot of times there are no wrong answers either, right? That's the beautiful thing about financial planning, right? What are you most comfortable with and what fits you the best? So restricted stock units and restricted stock awards are grants of stock to you in the form of shares of your company. And as they vest, they will either be taxable at the time they are granted to you, even though you don't have access to them, or at the time you actually receive them. There are also what we call stock options. There are things like non-qualified stock options and incentive stock options. And again, the difference between the two has everything to do with how you are taxed and when you are taxed. But they give you the option of purchasing stock at a grant price. So for example, Sylvia, you've been doing a great job. We're going to give you, 100 shares of Schwab stock in the form of non-qualified stock options at a grant price of $40 a share, for example. If Schwab is trading above $40 a share, right, and then she has the option of purchasing Schwab at $40, right, and she realizes the benefit of where we're trading at now, which I don't know what it was today, Sylvia, I think $55 or something like that. So, right. But if she can go in the open market and purchase, Schwab shares for, let's say, $20 a share, there's no way she's going to exercise and pay $40 for those options. And that's why they're called options. They're not grants of shares. They are the option to purchase shares at a set price. And depending on what kind of option they are, that will determine how you are taxed. Okay. Whenever we talk about any sort of taxation on any sort of equity compensation, it is always important to involve not only your financial advisor, but also your tax advisor as well. Okay. I can tell you today what tax rules look like and tax legislation looks like right now, but 5 years from now, we don't know what Congress is going to do with taxes. So these are always moving targets, and it's always a very important thing to make sure that you're involving both your financial planner and your tax advisor when it comes to planning and tax planning around equity comp. There are also things like employee stock purchase programs where you do have the ability to purchase company stock at a discount a lot of times. And again, rules around those are specific to each plan. Sometimes there is a set discount. Sometimes there's a look back period. Just depends on the plan that you have. But the employee stock ownership programs, the employee stock purchase plans that are available to you certainly can be a very effective way of saving and automating things like your savings. So when it comes to equity compensation, certainly there is, it really, I think, in my opinion, depends on the company that you're working for. So for example, for Sylvia and I, we work for, and Chasey, we work for Charles Schwab. We have less negotiating power with an organization as large as the one that we work for, as far as saying, hey, you know what, I want to negotiate what my equity compensation is. But I work with a lot of spouses of our employees that are starting and working for startups that have a lot of negotiation power when they are negotiating their employment, what their salary looks like. And a lot of times you have a lot more flexibility negotiating things like equity compensation versus your salary, because that is going to give you additional motivation in terms of your performance with the company, et cetera. So kind of a brief overview on equity compensation. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. We could go down any number of rabbit holes here if we wanted to, but at the end of the day, you know, really, and I'm just going to take a real quick step back, is, you know, it's interesting. Sylvia and I do this for a living where we only work with Schwab employees. We know Schwab benefits inside and out. And even still, Sylvia and I have questions and need clarification on employee benefits. Getting to know what benefits are available to you and then starting to identify how to prioritize those benefits is critically important. And I would venture a guess, and I can only see, you know, 5 of us on this call, but I probably have more gray hair than anybody here. You have an advantage over probably all of us, and that is you have time on your side. And the earlier you start addressing your financial issues at the end of the day, right? How organized are we? How much are we saving? How much are we spending? And really, what are we working toward? And if you want options earlier in life, better to know what benefits are available to you, how you can take advantage of them, and get them working for you as soon as possible. Greatest asset of any value that you have on your side right now is time. Take advantage of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. Do we have any questions right now for either Ben or Sylvia? And feel welcome to come off of mute or raise your hand to ask. Okay, Ben, just to follow up, there was a couple of things that you said regarding equity compensation. And I know a lot of times when we mention that word, a lot of people think of publicly traded companies.
Correct.
Can you speak a little bit on maybe some of the differences between if you're working for a public company versus a private company? What similarities and what differences might there be?
So, yeah, so I mean, so private companies have stock just like public companies do. They just don't trade on exchange, right? And I mean, that's the primary difference. They still have values that go up and down. So, for example, Charles Schwab is a publicly traded company. You guys have probably also heard of Fidelity. They are not a publicly traded company, but they still have shares of stock just the same. And there is a lot of equity compensation that happens at both places. I am aware of it. And so, you know, as far as what the differences are, liquidity is one of the differences. Certainly, depending on the size of your company, that can certainly affect things, and how much you're able to, and how easily you're able to liquidate your stock at a certain price. So there are some differences that way, but essentially, you know, they're fairly similar. I don't know, Sylvia, do you have any thoughts there?
I will say that when it's a large company like that, public versus private, you know, like you said, it's the benefits are there. I think one of the things that I would kind of just give a heads up on is when you're working with a private company that's a startup, right? And you're negotiating your compensation. If they're going to be giving you stock options or restricted stock, they can be worth something if they make it, right? And they're the next Google or whatever, and they could be worth nothing if they don't ever make it, right? So when you're negotiating and when you're thinking about your compensation, take into consideration, right? Do I want that salary that I know I'm going to get, or do I want to take some of my salary with equity compensation on a company that I'm not really sure, right? It's a bet and it can pan out fantastic, or it might not. So just kind of beware of that as you go into the negotiating table, right? That when it's a startup company like that, that's private, that's a risk. Are you willing to take or not? How much do you believe in what that company is doing? I'll give you an example. My son went out and he did that, and he thought this was going to be the next great thing, and he walked away from the company with nothing. He had a bunch of, equity compensation that was worth absolutely nothing. So when you go to negotiate, right, just kind of keep that in mind, that you definitely, do you want that compensation? It's always kind of a balance, right? It could be fantastic, but it could also be something that you might not work out as you thought it might.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for those of you, if you do have questions, like I said, feel welcome. You can come off mute, raise your hand, and we will definitely call on you. Or if you would like to type anything in the chat, feel welcome to do so. Any comments or questions? There was a question that we did have emailed earlier, Sylvia, so I want to direct this to you since you had spoke earlier on 401k plans. There was a question regarding deferred compensation plans and how that fits into the equation. I know a lot of people sometimes will take advantage of those, especially once they have maxed out on the 401k side of it. So can you speak a little bit to the deferred compensation plans?
So when we're talking about deferred compensation, are we talking about an actual deferred compensation where you get to defer your income till the future? Is that the kind of plan?
So this one was, I believe this one was regarding like 457 deferred compensation plans that are sometimes included on top of like 403B plans and 401k plans.
Okay, so usually when you are offered that kind of plan, sometimes it's like a package, right? You're able to put together a 401k plan and a deferred compensation plan, and they're within that same package to take advantage of the greater ability to set money aside. For example, a 401k plan, you can only set aside up to $22,500, right? And then again, if you're 50 or older, you get to put in some more. But the IRS actually lets you set aside up to $66,000 in a year, right? And that can be in a mix of those different types of plans, right? You can have a 401k plan, you can have a 457 plan, you can have an employer can give you a nice profit sharing plan, right? That are usually part of that. So you've got profit sharing, you've got 401k, doctors do that, attorneys do that, attorney plans, pilot plans have those kinds of like packages of like that deferred compensation kind of planning with the 401k and the different plans. I mean, if you have the benefit of having that kind of a package, it's fantastic because you can set aside, it's usually for people that are making a lot of money and that are trying to defer as much of their compensation from tax purposes, right, into those types of plans. So fantastic to be able to take advantage of all of that all together to get that greater $66,000 deferred monies into those plans. Did that answer the question?
Thank you. Ben, would you like to add anything to that? Or you good?
No, I think that covers it pretty well. So there's always a risk with deferred compensation. Again, I would tell you that it is something that you definitely need to have a discussion with, with your financial advisor, if you can, and if that's something that's available to you, because with deferred compensation, you're not always protected in any way, and a lot of times You know, if something were to happen with a company, you are not owed that compensation if the company were to go bankrupt, for example. So I mean, there are risks associated with things like deferred compensation. So again, trying to find the right balance certainly would be the right thing to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
Another question in the chat. Oh, go ahead. Did you want to add to that?
I'm sorry. So I would clarify, Ben is absolutely right on the deferred compensation plan when it's a true deferred compensation plan, because there are, and usually it's people that are at a certain level right in their career, they are actually able to defer their compensation and say to the IRS, hey, I'm making 400 grand, but I'm going to defer 100,000 of that till a later time, till I retire. That's exactly right what Ben said. In those kinds of plans, you are deferring compensation. You're not paying taxes on it now, right? And there's no kind of like that, you can do that, but it's really not your money. That's the only reason the IRS lets you do that. That's your employer's money, and they're promising to pay you back, you know, in the future. So yeah, if it goes bankrupt or it's available to creditors, so there are risks that you run. And I think the question that was coming in, I just want to clarify to make sure the question you were asking were more around like the 457 plans and that kind of a deferred compensation plans. Yeah, those are set in the limits are 66,000. There's, you know, and it's set within the ERISA rules and regulations. So in that particular case, they are protected. But again, there are very few people that can do that. Like I said, the pilots, the doctors, the attorney, like those are the people that have access to those. They're a little different. They're both called deferred compensation plans. That's why I asked the question, because they're both kind of called different, and it confuses everybody because it's kind of silly, but yeah.
And that's great. Sure so both of them were answered. So that way, you know, if anyone is curious, that's either one. So both of them were covered. Awesome. So a question in the chat: if you have access to all of these options, how would you prioritize your funds? Talk to your advisor, right?
Yeah, I mean that really is at the end of the day, it is what is important to you, what are you comfortable with, what are we trying to accomplish, and how can we best do that? You know, there again, if we start here and we're trying to end here, there's probably 100 different roads that we can take and get there. But what are you the most comfortable with, and what provides the best chance of success? You know, I'll be very honest, when I give advice to the folks that I work with, that can look very, very different. And a lot of that is based on who that person is, what their personality is. You know, Sylvia and I have jobs because when it comes to your finances, right, we try to take our emotions out of all of our finances, but that's just not human, you know. And at the end of the day, certainly there are scary things, and you know, but it's not so easy to always be black and white about what we think the best way to go is. So when we prioritize in general, what we would always tell you, priority number one, take advantage of the match in your 401k. Right. And so if you get matched up to 5% or 10%, make sure you take advantage of that. I challenge you to tell me where you're going to get 100% return on your investment immediately. Outside of the 401k match, probably doesn't exist. That's number one. Number two, basics. And we would tell you, make sure that you have all of your non-deductible high interest debt taken care of, i.e. credit cards or maybe personal loans. And after that, have an emergency fund in place. From there, typical, and you guys, you can go to Schwab website. I'll call this out, schwabmoneywise.com. schwabmoneywise.com is a public website. It has all of this guidance on there. Again, there's no one size fits all for anybody. You know, it's people always tell me, well, Ben, you know, hey, if it's black and white, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, these are the steps that I take. It's not always that. It depends on your situation. But you know, having those three things in place, taking advantage of your company match, getting rid of high interest, non-deductible debt, having an emergency fund in place are the first three basics. And then from there, depending on your situation, right, where do we want to go? And typically that is, continue to maximize savings either via a health savings account or a retirement plan or IRA even, but what are your goals? Not everybody has the same goals. And so because of that, it's hard to say exactly what we think for each one of you would be, right, the best priority. But in general, I would tell you those 3 basics up front, and then have a conversation with somebody going forward. And at the end of the day, it's so funny, Sylvia, I mean, you and I do this all day long and we sit across the table from somebody, but really we're sitting on the same side of the table with them, helping them and working with them to let's work through this and figure it out. But too many people ignore their finances. Too many people kick the can down the road because you've got this, you've got this compensation goal, you've got these taxes, you've got retirement that we're talking about. And a lot of this stuff is goals that don't come to fruition for 40 years, and so it's easy to say, well, yeah, I'll deal with that. I'll worry about that when I get to my 30s and my 40s. Right. And a lot of times you're not doing yourself a favor by doing that. It's better to have these conversations early on, as ambiguous as they can be. And we will help you determine, and a financial advisor will help you determine what should be your priority at the time.
Awesome. Thank you. We do have another question that came in. Is there any benefit in contributing a higher percentage than your company match, or should you funnel those dollars into an IRA or elsewhere?
So I can take that. Yes, hands down, yes, there is a benefit of contributing more than just a match. If the question is yes, right, but now where should I do it? Should I do it within my 401k or should I do it within my IRA? Right, IRAs usually have a limit, and you can only do 6,500 in them, first of all. The other limit that you have to worry about is that you have to make under a certain dollar amount. If once you make a certain dollar amount more than that, and I'll look it up, for single individuals between $73,000 to $83,000. So most of us, right, as you advance in your careers, you're not going to be able to put money into an IRA anyway. So you might as well use your 401k, because your 401k, it doesn't matter how much you make, right? You can contribute up to the maximum, and the maximum is 22,500. So 6,500 in IRA, 22,500 in your 401k. 401k, right? The other thing that you're able to do within a 401k that you might not be able to do within an IRA is maybe possibly access the money. And this is important for those people that are just kind of getting started. If you're worried about, oh my gosh, I am only 20 something, I'm putting all of this money in my 401k, I don't need it until 40 years from now. What if I need that money? 401ks do usually have loan options, right? They have hardship distributions. It's a little bit more flexible if you need the money. Not that I'm advising that you should, because that's the last place you want to go to get money. But if you do need it, it's there. In an IRA, you can't. If you take a distribution from it, there's tax liabilities that are going to take effect. So a little bit more flexibility in your 401k. You're able to put a little bit more money in there, right? So yes, there is a benefit to contributing more than just the employer match in your 401k.
Right. And don't overlook things like health savings accounts. Health savings accounts are the best accounts ever for young folks who are healthy and have minimal, if any, medical expenses, because it's too common that people look at something like a health savings account option as, well, it's a tax efficient way of paying my health expenses right now, but I don't have any, so I'm not going to put any into it. And so they don't do that. And instead, you need to think of your health savings account as a wealth accumulation tool and something that you are going to use down the road in the future. They get overlooked all too often. I understand why, but do not overlook your health savings account. I think that they are so important. And again, we kind of gave us some basic guidelines here, but get your match in your 401k and then prioritize that health savings account. Absolutely do that. That's different than than a flex savings account. Flexible savings accounts are different. So if you have questions, again, talk to a financial advisor. I've seen some of I'm not really good at technology, guys. I've seen some of the questions kind of popping up here. So
yeah, go ahead. I think there were two of them that talked about the HSA. So since we're on that, two of the
Yep.
questions are, if your company doesn't offer an HSA, can you find one externally? And then would you recommend investing through your HSA or building the balance? I'm assuming that is, should you invest the HSA or find more like of a savings type account for that? If I'm
Okay, so one, absolutely, yes, you should invest your health savings account, again, especially if you're not expecting to, let's say, have a child in the next year or something like that, right? And if you have no expenses, let that money work smarter for you and invest that money. Two, in order to have a health savings account, you do have to have and be participating with a qualifying high deductible health plan. Okay, if you are participating with a simple copay plan that is offered by a lot of companies, you are not eligible for an HSA account. But keep in mind with the HSA, you never lose that money. You can use it down the road. In fact, you can actually pay your health expenses out of pocket, out of let's just say your savings account, your taxable account, and let your health expenses accumulate for 30 years, take advantage of tax-free growth, and then reimburse yourself for 30 years worth of health expenses if you want to. That's one of the strategies around HSAs that can be considered. So, you can get pretty creative with these things. They are great accounts. Do not overlook them.
And maybe we didn't mention this, but the reason that they're fantastic accounts is because the money goes in, you don't pay taxes. It grows and it's invested, you don't pay taxes. You take it out, and as long as you're using it for healthcare, you don't pay taxes. It's a trifecta, right? It's better than the 401k if you really think about it. So yeah. Take that HSA.
Right, that old adage, the only guarantees in life are death and taxes. Well, there's kind of an asterisk up next to that taxes piece now, because that's not necessarily true. And that's they are, man, what a great account to be tax efficient. You can pay Medicare premiums, for heaven's sake, with an HSA. We're all going to get there, at least we hope we do, right? And we're going to be paying those expenses down the road. So again, don't overlook the HSA. I did see another question pop up about if your company doesn't offer a match, should you still put money into the 401k? Heck yeah, correct. Absolutely. You should absolutely do that. Prioritize savings. Like we said at the start of the call, at the end of the day, any financial goal, it really boils down to how much are you saving and how much are you spending. Do not let the fact that you're not receiving a match from your company, do not let that deter you from taking advantage of those accounts. Absolutely not. The only other question that I saw pop up had to do with, if you work for a private firm, how do I divest those shares? A lot of times you sell those shares back to your company is what happens in private firms. But again, it just depends on the firm and at the end of the day, if you own something and you want to sell it, you've got to find a buyer for it, right? And so a lot of times you're selling them back to the company, but it again kind of depends on the situation.
Absolutely, thank you. Let me go back to make sure we hit on everything. How do you find a good financial advisor? What are some things that you should look for?
I can give you my opinion, then Ben, please jump in. I would always look for a certified financial planner, not because we're certified financial planners, but because they have a fiduciary responsibility to be looking out for your best interest, period. If you go to a bank or if you go to a financial company and you're speaking with somebody that is only an advisor, right, but doesn't have the designation, find out how they're compensated, right? Are they compensated on commission? Are they benefiting from you investing a certain way? So make sure that you understand how that person is getting paid. usually, again, certified financial planners, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients. We have to look out for their benefit, right? And we usually get compensated on salary, not on commission. So we're not gaining anything from you investing in one product versus a different product. So just understand how they're compensated to make sure that there's no conflict of interest there, if you will.
Absolutely. And I actually put in the chat box, it's a website, letsmakeaplan.org. That is the CFP board website. So of course, Schwab, as always, Schwab is our presenters and our sponsors. So definitely consider them in any of your planning needs. But you can also check out the CFP board website for more information on the responsibilities, the duties of a certified financial planner. And they have a lot of information there as well. But always, Charles Schwab is a large company, great advisors that they do have on staff that could assist. And keep in mind too that depending on where you work, they cover a lot of retirement plans. So they may already be connected with your company in that capacity, where you have access to an advisor in that way as well.
And I would offer this for what it's worth. I'm a certified financial planner. I've been with Schwab for 12 years now. I meet once a year with one of my colleagues in the employee branch to get a third set of eyes on my situation from somebody who is not emotionally involved in my situation. Just because I have the knowledge doesn't prevent me from some of the traps that you can fall into from a financial perspective. Okay, don't ever think that getting and seeking counsel, regardless of where your knowledge base is a bad idea. It's always a prudent thing to do.
Great.
Awesome. I think we covered everything in all the questions. Are there any final questions before we go on to the last topic and get ready to close out this evening? Okay. So the last thing, Ben and Sylvia, if you all want to give your thoughts on this. So when we are negotiating equity compensation or negotiating offer packages, a lot of times, you hear people say, well, you negotiate at the point where you get the offer, but before you accept the offer. So that's kind of the negotiating period. So what are some things to consider? I know just in speaking with others, people will say things like, of course, research the company, review, their financials, financial potential, gather as much information on your own as you can. Are there any other negotiating tips with regards to equity compensation that you've seen that you can offer? Okay.
I would just say that a lot of the times, depending again on the company, and I think Ben mentioned it before, right, that you might not have the ability, right, at whatever position that you're entering in, deferred compensation or equity compensation might not even be on the table. That might be something that is only offered as a form of, you did a fantastic job, we're going to give you this award, right? So make sure that you don't, that you understand that sometimes you're not going to be able to do that you might be able to do that in smaller companies, that you can negotiate that. And then if you do, just understand exactly kind of what you're negotiating. So if you get the offer, right, you always have the ability to say, I'm going to, just think about it and pause, get some expert advice, find out, get in front of a financial planner, a certified financial planner, if you will, and understand what you are being offered and what is that benefit, especially if you're going to be able to be negotiating it. You need to understand what it is before you try to negotiate.
Yeah, and I would offer this, that if you do get an offer and they're saying, hey, we're willing to pay you this salary, give you this bonus potential, and then this sort of equity compensation, I would be very careful of wanting to accept a lower salary versus a higher equity compensation, and so guarantees are great, you guys, in a lot of ways, but things come up. We've all seen what's happened with the stock market and inflation and everything else over the past year and a half. And so I would be very careful about negotiating for higher equity compensation and a lower salary. If anything, I'd probably want to go the other way.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. One other question came in. Do you have to have a certain dollar amount to start to work with a CFP?
No, I mean, normally not, right? And there's different CFPs, and so you can actually go and hire a CFP, right? And that's usually fee-based, or you can work with a financial company like, Schwab or Fidelity or, whomever, and they will have advisors as their employees, and there's some that have certified financial planner designation, some do not. And depending on the company, you might get a certified financial planner at a certain dollar point, sometimes not. At Schwab, you can usually, especially for planning purposes, we put together plans, financial plans, and there's certified financial planners doing that.
One of the things that Schwab, and I can't speak for other financial companies, I'm sure they're probably adopting a similar model that has started is you can actually pay a subscription, a monthly subscription to work with a certified financial planner where they will help you not only with your financial plan, but also the investments. And Sylvia, if I'm correct, I believe that the minimum on something like that is what, 25, I think, thousand on retail, and the subscription price is $30 a month. You think of what you pay for things like your subscription to Netflix, your cell phone bill, all of those other things. Boy, what a great way to spend some money in a reasonable way at $30 a month to be able to sit down and help figure out your finances and have somebody like a CFP available to you. And I just speak about Schwab because that's what I know. I'm sure other companies are offering these services as well, but don't feel like you got to walk through the door with $1 million to be able to talk to somebody. Absolutely not. There are a lot of resources available to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I want to thank Sylvia. Thank you for joining us this evening. Ben, thank you. And Chasey, as always, thank you, and the partnership with Charles Schwab. I'm just going to finish up with some housekeeping items and give you all the rest of the evening. So for those of you who are not members, feel welcome to check out our website, cflblackmba.org, to learn more about the organization. We cover the 5 local counties in the Central Florida area, and we have roughly about 185 local financial members, and we put on about 20 plus programs throughout the year. If you are not following us on any of our media pages, please make sure you can follow us on our official Facebook page, Instagram page, as well as LinkedIn page. We also have groups in Facebook as well as LinkedIn, and our YouTube page. This event, as well as the next 2 series, will be shared on our YouTube page, so definitely feel welcome to share with those that were not able to join us this evening, and we hope that you will be able to join us next week for part 2. Again, thank you to Charles Schwab. If you are looking for additional information on the services that they provide, feel welcome to go to the website, Charles Schwab or schwab.com. And then, as always, they not only provide us with a partnership in doing events like this, but also job opportunities. So if Charles Schwab is a company that offers an opportunity that may be exciting to you, that may be appealing to you, feel welcome to check out the jobs opportunities that they have available on their website, schwabjobs.com. And I'm sure